Hello, and welcome to the Right Perspective Podcast, Interview Edition. I'm your host, Benjamin Davis, and I'm joined today by the Classic Ponderer. Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing well. So, before we get into the questions about how we save the West, who are you? Who are the people listening to?
Well, my online name is the Classical Ponderer. I'm found basically with that same name on Twitter. I am just a college student. I like reading philosophy and politics and history and theology. I like the bigger, more monumental questions than the minutia of like STEM and things like that. I like to joke and say that I got into philosophy because I just simply was not that smart for math. But yeah, no, so that's basically just who I am. I like asking questions. I like figuring things out. I like making sense of things solely for my sake. And if people find my observations helpful, then great. But, it's just really for my enjoyment.
You're like the opposite of me. I am not philosophical at all. You like to think where I don't like to think, so this should be fun. So,
Enough.
what's the major problem you see in the West, in Christendom?
So the major problem I see in the West and in Christendom is that basically for the past 200 years, Christianity has become all but lobotomized. It used to be, in a temporal, like worldly sense, a very serious religion. It took itself seriously. It understood that it held the knowledge of the true, the good, and the beautiful, like in its grasp. It understood that God was the creator of all good things, and all beauty, and all justice, and all things like that. So the politics were surrounded around the good of like everyone, that gets called the common good. The architecture was meant to reflect the beauty of what they saw as unity and harmony and things of that nature. They went forward to really understand things, have philosophical categories, have government be as succinct as possible and like the best it possibly could be able to argue the best. They sought for excellence in every sphere of life, and they took themselves seriously because they're like, if the pagans themselves, who did not have the fullness of knowledge of literally everything as we basically do at this point, if they can create these beautiful things and seek after justice and get really close in their philosophical processes, how much more, having been revealed the truth that we possibly could not have come to based on our own just observation. And so that was just like a massive strive that Christianity had, was to be excellent in every sphere. That like we have God on our side, and so why not settle for anything less than what we possibly could, the best we possibly could do. And then within the past 200 years, what I've seen is that there's been this monumental shift where people sort of kind of purity spiraled, and they started giving up institutions for the sake of claiming to be more holy. They started going to the lowest common denominator, because what could be more holy than making sure like even the most illiterate person can understand what you're saying? But in that, they started becoming a lot more emotional. They started becoming a lot more simple in their speech. Their doctrine became far more diluted and things like that. And they started, and Christians started taking themselves kind of less seriously, because there was this monumental shift in intellectualism for like more purely rational things. And they started arguing, and the secular realm started arguing things that they are pushing God out of the sphere of just every out of every sphere of life. And so when Christians were seeing that in the intellectual world, some were fighting back and they were doing really well. But the majority of people, it kind of felt like if you believed in the supernatural realm, and then everybody in politics is really materialistic, then you kind of just have to like, it's the whole question of, well, what does Athens have to do with Jerusalem? It's like, I believe in God, and these people over here are doing logic. And so, just throw up your hands and give them the institutions, so that way you don't morally compromise yourself. But the issue is that, well, Athens has everything to do with Jerusalem. All truth is God's truth. There is nothing that is true that is also not known by the mind of God. And Augustine does really well in trying to synthesize this point. And all of like Christian tradition was getting to show that every sphere of life must submit to God and must be used to glorify him. And if we go in the corner and we purity spiral and we go to the lowest common denominator, then eventually every single effort is going to be undermined. And the atheists and the materialists and all the rest of them, they're holding the institutions. They're having far more influence in the West. and they can push really whatever they want. And Christians can be all up in arms and they can show a display of piety on the internet, and they can make institutions and things like that and slap on the name Christian, but they do it in a subpar way. They do it kind of haphazardly and lazily. And so what ends up happening is people have to settle for a lesser product than what they get from the secular people. But because the name Christian is slapped onto it, they think they have to enjoy it. And so I've seen, especially when I was in the non-denom realm back in like 2021, usually what happened is there would be like a rap song that people would love. And then this quote unquote Christian artist would release basically the same thing with worse lyrics and worse beat, like a worse beat. And then people, it kind of felt like you had to listen to it and had to enjoy it because, well, the name Christian slapped onto it. And I feel like that's happening a lot, especially right now within like the new right movement. Like some people are original and they're pursuing excellence, and that's great. But I've seen a lot of people that are like, okay, this format of video reacting on Instagram Reels is working really well, so let me copy that. Or let me copy these kind of edits. And Christians used to be at the tip of the spear for culture. They used to be progressing literally everything, not towards, like, there's either a progression towards the fullness of things or the destruction of things. Either you're going towards God or towards your own annihilation. And Christians used to be saying, no, we must progress towards the perfection, towards the true, the good, and the beautiful, towards the best that we possibly can conceive of. Meanwhile, our culture right now is at a race to the bottom. It's at a race to our own destruction. And Christians are kind of like following that, and they're like, okay, I see that that more secular people or more like or less moral people are going forth, and they're going forth and they're making these risks. They're taking these risks. And some people are really working out well. Now let me follow after what I see is working. And it's just always a diluted version, but they slap Christian as a title, and then they have a whole base. They're using the monopoly of morals in the Christian sphere to kind of propagate what they're doing. And I just find that kind of wrong. I find that lazy. And so I find that just the lobotomization of Christianity has really destroyed the West. And we need to have a conscious strength and a conscious strive for excellence in order for really anything to happen. And a true trust that God will bless our efforts if we do it for His glory.
That's good. I really love what you said about Athens really does have everything to do with Jerusalem, and might I add, Venice or something like that. The logic, the beauty, all this stuff does flow from God. Truth flows from God. That's good. What you said about just Christians copying, slapping on the word Christian and like, oh, you must enjoy this because it says Christian. That's kind of happening in conservative circles as well. The Daily Wire released their teaser trailer for the Pendragon cycle, and it just looks like it's going to be a Game of Thrones copycat. And
Yeah.
people were in the comments like, these conservatives need to take the win. And it's like, it's not a win. It's not a win.
Yeah.
It's just going to be like all the leftists. Yeah. Like, what? So why is this important? As long as we're getting saved, why should we pursue excellence in art, in the institutions, in education, all these things? Why is that important?
It's very important because the worst theologians are the theologians who only study theology. And so what I mean by that is that we are complex creatures, and God has made all of these things. The manifestations of beauty are found all around. And it was to the point where when Christians were really striving for objective beauty, atheists will spend hundreds and thousands of dollars and take off weeks of work just to see the monumental things that we have built because it's so beautiful. And there's nothing like that anymore. There's no thing where an atheist is like literally at the sight or sound of anymore that we have made. It's all just like, that was a horrible it's a whole PureFlix type thing where it's just like, do you want Hallmark but worse somehow? And it's like, I don't get it. But no, it's very important because we worship a God who has spoke about all of these things and cared about all of these things all throughout his revealed, like all throughout the Old and New Testament, all throughout the scriptures, right? When he is having his temple constructed, it's beautiful, it's cohesive, it's harmonious. It was said somewhere in the Old Testament that the pagan nations would look upon Israel and say, their laws were so moral, like that's incredible. We should kind of strive for that. You can see, like, all throughout the Old and New Testament, these things are very important. And also, it's the whole notion of Paul saying, become all things to all people in order that you may win some. I think the evangelicals mixed up that word and think it's literally winsome. You have to be winsome instead of winsome, because they've just completely dropped the ball on that one. But no, if there are certain people that God will use different mediums to convince or to convert or things like that. I'm a more intellectual mind, and I somewhat implicitly understood the reality of Christianity, but I was never strong in my faith until I recognized that, oh, you can be logical and still be a Christian. Oh, you can interact with philosophy and still be a Christian. And so that really strengthened my faith, and I've seen that really help some people. Some other people, it's looking at beauty of art. And I think, don't quote me on this, but I think Nietzsche said something like, I cannot account for why I want to strive for beauty, or something like that. And even if that's like a misquote, I've seen a lot of people, like a lot of my atheistic or really agnostic friends now, the whole atheistic movement is shifting to, well, I just don't know. I can't make that positive claim anymore. But it's like they see something beautiful and they're like, why is this beautiful? And that makes them, that the beauty that they understand as beautiful testifies against them, because what they want to do is say that there's no objective beauty. And yet if they listen to Mozart, they could cry. And now why does that happen? Why does music have any effect on the soul? Why does seeing a harmonious structure make somebody stop in awe and want to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to go out of their way to see? Like, why is this important? Why is it important that why is it important that our laws be moral and things like that? Well, if we are Christians and we understand that sin has ravaged literally everything, but that God has created us good and that we are made in the image of God, we can see that sin is this marring. And we can see that, like, we ought to have pity and we ought to want the absolute best for everybody. Although, like, we ought to want the best for everybody, although they still could not be saved. It's just still like such like a driving factor. God allows the rain to rain on the just and the unjust. I would want to live in a nation where even the atheist is comfortable and able to pursue excellence and be surrounded by true good and beauty. Like, I would want that. I don't know how you could be a Christian and not want that. And so I find it the most important thing, because we are not Christians in a vacuum. We are placed in a world that has a lot of complexities, and God has made it with a lot of complexities, and it's good. The soul, like different people with different, not different, I don't know really how to explain this, but like, I guess different temperaments, different appetites. They are drawn to different things. I've seen people respond to beauty and want to understand that. I've seen people respond to music and want to understand that. Philosophical reasoning. Why do we have the law of non-contradiction? Like, why are there laws in general? Things in science. Understanding the intricacies of science. I mean, like, God created a good world. And at the very least, Christians should want to understand what made it good. And then, like, we are lesser creators just by nature. And so if you're going to create something, the heathen is creating something that is still excellent because he still has that image of God and that kind of thing, like fighting against the sin in him, that kind of just implicitly understands that this thing is good somehow, but they can't account for it. But Christians, because I think, it was C.S. Lewis that said this, it's a paraphrased quote, but it's like, because we do philosophy good, because there are people out there that are doing bad philosophy. And so if you see that there are a lot of spheres where the atheist, the agnostic, the pagan, they are excelling, well, it can't be just, oh my goodness, I really wish somebody would go out and represent Christianity in this sphere and kind of like fight back against this. No, if you see the need, you ought to do it. You ought to pursue that. If you see the need, that relatively means you have an interest in it, and you should do that. And so if there are people making degenerate work, if there are people making unjust laws, if there are people philosophizing wrong and immorally, then it is the Christian duty to go throughout all of these spheres and pursue excellence, the true, the good, and the beautiful, and wish to glorify God by being excellent and doing it for his glory.
So that's good stuff. So you've already touched a little bit on the how do we personally fix this problem, but let's zoom out to the macro fix first. How do we work on this on a societal level, on a governmental level? How do we fix it there?
So on the societal level, naturally with humans, in our sinful state, we're impatient beings. We want everything just to happen as soon as we can possibly conceive it to happen. And so I don't think there can be a genuine, successful, long-standing effort where like we just roll into the White House and just rip everything apart and we're like, there was a meme I saw and it was like the 4 quadrants of the political compass. And they're all saying, I really wish our current state would fall so my ideology can come to power. And it's like, so I don't think we ought to wait for that. But I do think we have to understand that our current thing that we are in, the zeitgeist, is not a constant thing. There's not going to be the eternal boomer. There's not going to be the solidification of what we are in right now. Just naturally, when the older people die out and the younger generations come to power, there naturally will be a shift in morals and a different interests and things of that nature. And so what I would say is we really have to pour into young men and see not suppress their zeal in the slightest, but kind of guide it. We have to equip them with the right things so that way it's not like you don't want one of two things in war. You don't want to give like a really rambunctious man with no training a sword and say, get out there. But you also don't want to give a really trained man a stick and say, get out there. So you need kind of both. You need the training and you need the right equipment to go forth and do that. So I would say the biggest thing is we have to strive for excellence. I would say that the biggest goal that Christians should move towards is trying to recapture the Ivy Leagues. Because Zoomer, Redeemed Zoomer, he's like, let's go and capture the main lines and things like that. I would say, I have a lot of reasons I disagree with this. But one of them is I just think prudentially you'd be cutting off the head of a hydra. And so it's like if you don't have the Ivy Leagues and those institutions, I mean, those are where our governmental people come from. Those are where the presidents, the vice presidents, all the people going into power, the really good lawyers and the culture makers, the intellectuals, they come out of these institutions. And so if you don't have them, whether or not you say that they're horrible, and that they're not really teaching well and that they themselves are deluded and lobotomized, sure, we can discuss the nature of things until we're dead and we can just fight back and forth with each other and not make any forward progress. But the reality of the state that we're in right now is that we are in an age and there are institutions of education that then flow into all of society. And so if you're intellectuals and you're lawyers and even even the pastors in the main lines, if they're coming out of these institutions and they basically are universally recognized as being very important with at least credentials, then the main focus should be, all right, let's go into these institutions. Try to get these credentials. If people care about credentials so much, but let's get them. I mean, I don't see the need to constantly idealize and be credentials really shouldn't matter. Okay, we live in a society. They matter. And so, but yeah, they matter. And so I think that we should go into the institutions. I think that parallel institutions are good and they're fine. And I think there's a time and a place for them. But I feel like a constant effort to capture those institutions are very fundamentally important because I don't think they're going away. I really don't think they're dying. Some people want to claim such, and they want to claim that Babylon is crumbling before our eyes. And I just really don't see it that much. And so I would say that pastors and like people like you and podcasts and things of that nature, any type of media should be telling young men that, like, no, you can win the world. You can be competent enough to go into these institutions, get a degree, and be respected in your field. Like, don't be schizo about it. Don't go into like an intellectual sphere and then are constantly like crying out, you guys are immoral and you guys are wicked and I like you guys are gonna burn in hell and things like that. Like, there is a time and a place, but it's like, you win by making good things. If you just want to prudentially talk about winning, Dostoevsky said the world will be saved by beauty. Like, naturally, if you make good things, even if people disagree with you fundamentally, they're still going to appreciate it. I mean, like, H.P. Lovecraft, under literally every circumstance, that's a cantable man. Like, if there's a lot of things about the man that if you look in his personal life, you're like, yeah, this man would be lost to history just completely, like by basically everyone. But he made something really good, and people constantly talk about it. And so it's like, okay, if we are in a very hostile world, let's be people like let's be people like Bach, where we're making something so beautiful that even the atheist, the pagan, the agnostic, they come to see what we have done and say, that's honestly fair and good. Like philosophers like Aquinas and Augustine, people like I just watch these YouTubers, and they're philosophical YouTubers and they're agnostic, and they're like, no, Aquinas made really good arguments, or like Augustine makes really good arguments, or Kierkegaard makes really good observations. It's like, these things are just known. And so if we can go forward and actually do well in this world, not be not see this temporal world as just really evil and wretched, and we have to kind of escape it and have our own little like sub-pocket parallel society, and that's somehow going to win everything. It's like, no. If you get the president on your side in any way, shape, or form, and looking at politics, you may say that's not even like a live option right now, which, fine. But idealistically, if you get the president, you're winning. Like, this is why the monks would go to kings and try to convince them first. They did not go to the local blacksmith and they're like, all right, dude, like, let's have a really deep philosophical, theological conversation and let me win you over. It's like, no. Like, that's great and all. But, like, if you look at Jonah, it says, like, Jonah was going throughout Nineveh and he, like, was obviously talking to some people, but it was only until the edict by the king spread throughout Nineveh that everybody repented. Right? And so God even used the king in that instance to then go forth and call to repentance. And so we should strive to be in government. We should strive to make beautiful things in any sphere of life which God has given us the natural abilities to excel in. We should strive to be in the Ivy Leagues and the institutions. We should strive to be a very excellent religion. Because I feel at this point, we are completely diluted and watered down and are taking for granted all of the labor that all of Christians throughout the past 2,000 years have done. And I find that very unfortunate. Study church history, see what these great and faithful men have done in society against the magistrate, crafting poetry and things like that, and then copy them, imitate them. I mean, Dante was imitating Virgil, and he made that great work of the Divine Comedy. Like, you can excel by imitating. And, like, LARP until it becomes reality, I guess, is the conclusion.
Hey, the fake it till you make it is a real thing.
Yeah.
I was going to summarize you, but you summarized very well there at the end. Very good stuff.
Thank you.
So when should we expect Classic Ponderer? Are you going for president of Yale or Harvard? Which one are we looking forward to?
Whatever I can get. I mean, I saw this thing. I don't even know if it's fake. I don't plan what I'm going to say. I just say things. And so I probably should have looked this up beforehand because it's a really solid quote if it is true. But apparently, allegedly, one of the mentors of Alexander the Great was trying to instill in him humility and said, well, Alexander, everybody has their limits. And allegedly, Alexander the Great said, then I'll spend my entire life trying to find where that is. And so if the Lord blesses me and allows me to be like a president of Yale or Harvard or whatever, I'll take it. But if not, and if I'm a part of like a local college or something like that, or I'm just in my corner writing books hoping at least one person will read it. I mean, whatever the Lord gives me, however many talents he gives me, I'll take it. But I really want to strive for excellence, so we'll see where I end up.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds really good. Well, you've talked a lot about what we can do personally, and you talked about taking back these institutions. So one of the concerns there, and I want your thoughts on how a young man can do it, is how do you get there? How do you get even near the top without being ideologically captured yourself? How do you do that?
Mhm. So, my writing professor said something I found very profound, where he says, when you're writing a story, and I'm philosophically minded, he goes, so your problem is going to be that you want to infuse philosophy into what you're writing. He goes, don't. He goes, naturally, what you believe will be shown throughout your work. And if you try to hyperfixate on making that the most clear thing in the world, then it'll just be wooden and all the things of that nature. It'll sound preachy. So he goes, just write. And whatever comes out of your heart will be shown on the page. And he's like, well, and he's like, and then you can see things about yourself that you never even realized that was in your unconscious. He's like, so if you end up the story and your character's justifying genocide, maybe you have to think about something really quick. But it's a natural, good rule to follow. And so if you are going into these institutions and things like that, you kind of have to be prudent. You have to understand time and place. You have to understand when is the right time to say something or not say something. You have to be smart. You have to be, engage in the game of politics in every sphere. And so to not be captured, well, I really trust in God, and I really trust that he will preserve his people. And so obviously make sure you have a time carved out throughout your day by which, you're in the word, or you're just thinking. You're just sitting there contemplating, not allowing any input to happen to you, not allowing anything to flow into your mind that you later have to then process, but allow yourself just to be there and chew on all the ideas that you've been hearing throughout the day and thinking about your future and contemplating God and all of his ways and all of the things of scripture. You need that time just to be by yourself and be in your head, because if not, the very pressing matters of the day will constantly push out the very important matters that you hold to. And so I heard this one thing where it was if the devil can't get you, he'll make you busy. And so it's he'll distract you. If you don't have the time to sit there and, pray to God, which is such a privilege. I mean, if you don't have that time, you're constantly pushing that away. I would question where your heart is in the first place. And I would say that if you are going throughout politics or these institutions, the academic world, et cetera, and you yourself are being corrupted and led astray, then you have to check something about your heart. You have to go back. You have to have that time set apart by which you can be in God's word and renew your spirit, be actively involved in church, be in prayer. And so I would say, guard your heart. The devil prowls like a roaring lion, but trust that God will preserve you in time of need. And so don't be so hyper-fixated where it's okay, I was in a meeting today and I should have said this and I didn't, and there it is, I'm an apostate now. It's no, have confidence that the Lord will preserve you and understand that his mercies are new every single day, every morning, and go forth through that. Go forth and live and conquer the world, and God will provide.
Good stuff. What your professor said, that's very interesting. I wonder if that's why so much modern Christian works, books, movies, whatever, sounds so preachy, is that because that's their point, is to get across the biblical worldview instead of just making a good story and letting that flow, if that makes sense. That makes sense.
100%. They don't, I really feel that at least a lot of people that I'm interacting with, whenever they argue for principles, for doctrine, for things like that, it doesn't sound like they really believe it. It sounds like when they're arguing, they're trying to convince themselves of these things. And so when people are making quote-unquote Christian art right now, they think, I have to convince the person of the gospel listening to this in 5 seconds flat. And so, okay, now what do you get? You get middle-aged moms watching your work because they feel bad and they feel like that's the only thing they can consume. And that's not your target audience, really. You have the atheists who are not paying attention to you in the slightest because your work sucks, just calling it as it is. And then you have the really devout religious people that are not paying attention to your work either because your doctrine is diluted. And so nobody's really winning here. And so, like, one of my favorite novelists is Dostoevsky. And I truly believe, a faithful Christian man. Crime and Punishment is an excellent work. And like people from all around, from all spheres of life, are reading this, and like a kind of redemptive scene in there are literally breaking people, and they're making people grapple with the true morality and whether or not God is real, because the story was so impactful and beautiful. You didn't have somebody pop up to the main character and then have a whole gospel presentation and wanted to prove to them why predestination is a thing and all the rest of that. It's like, no. Throughout the story, what the biggest driving factor of the attempt sanctifying this man was having a care for him, showing a true, genuine care for him. I find that a lot of missionary work and or at least evangelistic work is, can I hit my quota? Can I go forward and say these things? How many times can I say Jesus loves you? And, whatever will happen. It's like, no. Usually what happens is people want to feel cared about. They want to feel like somebody has a concern for them. And so if you have a fake concern and you're like a random person, you're like, oh, I love you, I really don't want you to end up in hell and things like that. It's like, well, that may be true. That comes across as fake. And people hate and can see theatrics. And so it's like, no, you need to have genuine care for these people. You need to have a genuine want to see your society grow and glorify God. You need to have these genuine loves for what I call positive things, because in every type of movement, I say there are the positive and negative factors of the movement. The negative factors are, I hate this. This thing is wrong. This thing needs to be fixed. The positive things are, this has to happen. I want this thing to happen. I want it to be reformed in this way. And so if you have a movement constantly focused on the negatives, it's not going to really draw in people. It's not going to be a successful movement. It's purely reactionary. But if you're only focused on loves and idealizing, you're not good at politics. And so you need to have both. And so you need to have a genuine love for these things. It can't be a fake love, but it has to be a genuine love for God, a genuine love for your neighbor, a genuine love for the well-being of your nation. And out of that will produce greatness. But if you don't have that, then you'll see the theatrics, you'll see the dilution of our doctrine and our influence, you'll see our media get worse and worse and worse, and then we'll just be, little pockets, and we'll be back in the early church where we're constantly just being destroyed, and we're going to be like, well, what happened? It's like, well, I don't know what happened. Maybe you gave up everything claiming that you're glorifying God, and in reality, you're just masking your cowardice. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, let's try to avoid that.
Yeah.
And I think that whole negative versus positive thing is happening on the right now. We were always negative. All this stuff is bad: transgenderism, abortion, Democrats, all this stuff. And now we're getting a little bit more into the DHS posting all these Americana pictures, and it's like, we will have our country back. Things will be good. We'll be America. We will be Christian again. It's good stuff. Well, thank you for your encouragement towards excellence. I love talking to you. You talk about things, and every once in a while, it's just like things click for me. It's like here and there, and it's weird. It's good.
Thank you.
I asked the Council of Men what curveball question I should ask you, and they said to ask you how your date went and when are you buying a ring?
Day went well insofar as I woke up, I got ready, I poured coffee, I set up my laptop, and I'm here. When I buy the ring, I that's a good question. I have gone on one date, so I may or may not go the route of the average Christian man and go ring by spring, but I highly doubt that. We'll see. We shall see.
Well, we will watch your career with great interest.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ponderer. You have a great day.
Of course. You
wait,
too.
hold on.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
I don't even know my actual Twitter @ so that's kind of funny. It is at Classic Ponder,
And that's on X.
and that's on X, yes.
Okay, sounds good. I almost always forget to ask that question, so glad we got to do that this time. Okay. Thank you for talking to us.
Of course.